There we go. So Lance, I am delighted for you to be here today to be part of my podcast series on Stratospheric Leaders. Over the last 4 years, we've got to know each other really well. You've been an incredible contributor to the book I've written on stratospheric CEOs, which profiles founder CEOs in financial technology that have created multi-billion-dollar businesses. So I'm already privy to the insights, the lessons, the learnings that are going to emerge today. And I always like to start by giving a sense of who is the person when they're not in the seat they sit in. So I'm going to ask you, if we were to Google search you, what is one thing that we would not find out about you?
Well, you probably wouldn't find out that I wanted to play the flute and be in a high school marching band. That definitely wouldn't be on there. And I actually don't think I know anybody that has a child that's in a high school marching band, so it's kind of funny. But I did play the flute as my chosen instrument in high school, and I was quite proud of that. But I never took it too far.
Is that one you're going to revisit? A passion or hobby?
Actually, with 4 kids and 7 grandchildren, I've had the opportunity 2 or 3 times where a child and now grandchildren come home with their first recorder or their first flute, and it gives me an opportunity to pick it back up and realize that memories are long, and I can still remember the notes, the bass notes that you would play on the instrument.
And so to move on from there, you have been an extraordinary leader over the decades, and I'm sure there are many qualities that have shaped your success. And across history, we've seen many leaders who've transformed and reshaped the world in dramatically different ways. And I've taken 7 leaders from across history, and I'm going to ask you, who do you identify with most and why? Like, who most represents your leadership style? So the 7 that I've chosen are Einstein, Churchill, Steve Jobs, Caligula, Genghis Khan, Logan Roy from Succession, and Maximus Decimus, the Gladiator.
Wow. Well, the final one has a new movie coming out soon, so that's interesting. But no, if I, first thought as you give me that list is Steve Jobs, and not for his character, because I think I would be polar opposite to how he deals with people, how he leads his teams, I think would be quite different than me. But it's his attention to detail. I think that this quality in leadership is one of the most important things, that you're in the weeds, you know what's going on, whether it's with customers, with technology, with product, with marketing, with PR, with the board, with your investors, with your newest recruits. You need to know what's going on. And Steve Jobs impressed me with attention to detail. And I did have a chance to meet him in the early 90s. I was looking at technology in a trading room in a Canadian bank. And the big thing was something called small talk, which was this early object-oriented programming. And Steve Jobs came along with this little cube that he had in hand, and he puts it on the table, and he started to talk about next step and how it could transform the processing and speed of calculations in this object-oriented way. And I was just so impressed, not with how good the product looked, because all his products look good, but the detail that he had and the knowledge that he had about what the product could do. Fantastic. And so he would be the one I would choose on that list.
And out of interest, with you mentioned attention to detail there. Is that something you've learned to get good at, or do you think that's inherently part of who you are?
Well, the most overused word I've heard in the last decade, because I don't know what it was called when I was a child, but today they call it OCD. They'll even say, "You're so OCD." And so I do think that there are some characteristics that are, within ourselves that show themselves in leadership situations. And attention to detail a lot of time can be tied to an anxiety, I'm sure. But I just think as I developed as a leader, the more time I spent understanding what we were doing, what we're doing with a customer, what we're doing with a new product. What does the marketing look like? What does the final PR look like? How do the people feel? Are they working too hard? That's all detail. So
Yeah.
I think it's really important. And I think there are some natural characteristics and behaviors of individuals that are detailed oriented. I'm sure if I was a brain surgeon or an astronaut, you have to be quite detail oriented. But I think in business for leadership, it's a great quality and one that you can develop. You don't have to be born with it.
And you mentioned something there, and it reminded me of our conversations where you said, I measure everything. And I've always loved the quote, what gets measured improves. Can you give people a sense of what you measure? Because there's such attention to some of the smallest things that are important.
Yeah, it might be one of my most annoying leadership traits for my team is that I really want to measure and the to get to a great result, there's so many inputs needed to produce the great result. And that the great result can be a sale, completion of a product, completion of a testing run, introduction of a new training program, whatever you're doing. There's a whole bunch of things that I would call inputs. And when you measure those inputs and you keep them in the front, lens of what you're looking at, the front of the lens you're looking at, you actually become aware of where you may not be doing enough. So I like to measure, number of customer calls I'm willing to make, number of customer visits, number of days spent with sales teams on the road. Those are all things that are inputs to getting sales done.
Yeah.
And so when you measure them, you realize sometimes that, geez, I just went a quarter and I did half what I did on the customer inputs as I did the previous quarter. And you should know that you're letting yourself and your team down. And so I think that follows through with everything. If you're introducing a recruitment program at a university and I send all the associates to the university, that's one input. If I send the associates that went to the university, that's a different input. If I sent the executives that went to the university, another input. If I send the CEO and a diversified team to the university, that's another input. If you measure them, you are going to get better candidates, hands down. And it works like that in everything. So the challenge is getting back to the detail and organization and measurement. And I really think it is the number one trait of successful operations, client process, release of technology, new product development, culture and atmosphere of a firm. Measure it and it'll get done better. And I think Jeff Bezos is somebody that I understand at Amazon, the attention to detail and measurement of the Amazon product positioning and its pace of activity and the vitality of the pipeline was something that was front and center at management teams and meetings. And I feel the same way. I feel it's very important.
There's a saying that what you put your attention on expands. And I think there's something there for me about what you pay attention to is matter. It matters. That's what really ultimately drives the outputs of an organization.
100%. Yeah. The more you create focus on the activities that you want to reward and encourage, the better. And I actually think the report's a much nicer way for a team to see the results of the measurement than to have a meeting and say, oh, you're not doing enough of A, B, or C. I rather just produce a weekly report that includes myself with the activities we should be doing and then measure those. And, if I've got 3 reds, put my hand up, I'll sort those out next week. And that's important. So I don't like the word name and shame, but a report is basically doing that activity, which is it's exposing the important activities of the firm and then allowing exposure to the completion of them.
And there's one thing that comes up for me listening to you there around, you said the word focus. And I think focus is critical, especially on the entrepreneurial journey. How do you keep the main thing, so as not to overwhelm your executive team, so as not to be distracted by shiny objects?
I like to break things down into smaller, manageable numbers. So again, detail of what are we actually working on. And you completed your book, Stratospheric CEOs. I'm sure you've got ideas for 10 books, but at some point you got to choose 3 things and do them all well. And if you're not capable of 3 things, choose 2 things. And if you're not capable of 2 things, choose 1 thing. I think everybody's capable of managing processes and outcomes of 2 or 3 things. And as a team, of course, you can delegate and share the responsibility. But focus to me comes down to not doing too much. And that's something that you also, hopefully learn early, that doing a lot sometimes leads to mediocre results.
Yeah, and it dilutes attention.
100%.
And in our conversations, you shared you talked about your leadership style, you talked about being an incrementalist. And I wondered if you could share a little bit more about what that means to you and how that plays out how that's played out in your career.
Well, I think a lot of things that I did in my career was following the footsteps of somebody else, right? So you get a new job and somebody did that job before you for the last 5 years. They were a trader. They're trading mortgage-backed securities. That was my first job. What can I do to outperform in this new role? It's not rip up the role and say it's not there anymore. It's actually improving on that role. And a lot of things are foundational and need to be there. But the incremental things that you can do to make something even better is really, really relevant. And so what I tried to do first of all, in the financial markets with Markit, subsequently with IHS Markit, so we extended into automotive and energy and maritime and many other information services and technology, was to take, if I was creating a new product, how do we incrementally develop that product or marketplace to be a little bit better than what's already there? So if there was prices being processed daily, why not do a midday price? If there was twice a day prices, let's look at, can we create hourly pricing? Is there enough information to turn to real-time prices, live prices? And, is it possible to create benchmarks that close in Asia, Europe, and North America? And these are all things that I could do to be just incrementally better than the established players. And the established players were big. They were Bloomberg, they were Thomson Reuters, they were big stock exchanges, they were brokers, and they had been doing it how they'd always been doing it, providing transparency to the prices that were executed and potentially the closing prices that they had on their own desks. And I looked at ways of how could I improve that. And sometimes the improvement is an idea incrementally. Sometimes it's incrementally improving the technology, the processing, might be incrementally improving the marketing. So instead of just, word of mouth, start to attend conferences. If you want to do more than conferences, how about a newsletter? If you want to do more than a newsletter, how about, a podcast nowadays, or something else? How about write a book? So, the fact is I think everything can be incrementally improved. Those are a couple examples that, just describe what I think about when I think about incrementalism, but it really is small, manageable and measurable changes that make something even better.
Yeah.
Because most of the things that I improved were not broken. right? So when you look at something, it's even like if I'm looking at doing a performance review, it's not about what somebody's doing wrong. It's about the analysis of what they do and how can I incrementally make them even better. And it's a way different way of, leading. Well, to me, it's leading from the cup half full versus half empty.
And when I think about that incrementalism that you talked about, it is the small shifts that lead to the big swings, isn't it? And I think often people want to move to the big straight away, but it's doing things with consistency. That's the word that came up with me, and intentionality and being deliberate.
Right. Like within IHS Markit, we had a brand called Carfax, which is very large, and it was producing vehicle history reports for, tens of millions of cars across the United States. And this team throughout the, 7 or so years that we were involved together went from, starting off with vehicle history reports, extend that into the used car market. So all of a sudden, Carfax was supporting the ads and listings for used cars, competing against the likes of Auto Trader, but incrementally using the Carfax. Insurance companies and banks that were either lending money or insuring cars could incrementally benefit from the Carfax. The police who are looking for fraud and vehicles that might have been stolen, where they could track back against the vehicle history report, could incrementally use Carfax. Carfax operated in the Washington area. Could it incrementally improve performance by leveraging offices in Windsor across the border from Detroit in Canada, and gain a cost advantage? So all of these things I look at as incremental improvements or product developments or market opportunities that can be thought of without trying to boil the ocean and do something brand new. Take what you're doing well and do it even better.
I love that. And which is your team always talked about, one of your mottos, raising the bar.
Yeah,
Which...
I had a watch engraved recently, and they said, "What do you want to put on it for your grandchildren?" And I said, "Raise the bar." And I have to give credit to one of my earliest bosses. We took over. He became head of global fixed income, and he put in his new management team. I was in my 20s. I was on his management team, and our motto for the new plan for the new team was, "Let's raise the bar." And it's funny because somebody quite successful recently was asking me, "Well, raise the bar is great, but I feel like we're so far in advance now. We've got such a leadership role. How do you motivate a team when you have such a leadership position?" And I said, "That's a perfect question. I love that." Did I lose you?
No, I can still
Oh,
hear
sorry.
you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm really sorry because a message came up for a restart. So that was so I was where did you lose me?
No, I heard you the whole time where you said someone asked you, and it was an interesting question because they're
Yes, I
like,
love that question. I want to finish it properly. Oh yeah, sorry. Let's go back. So somebody came to me recently, very successful, that had worked with me and had kind of lived under the raise the bar scenario, and asked, "So what do you do when you have a team that's so high performing and you're so far out in front, but you still want to set the 2025 plan?" And I said, I've got the perfect answer for you, because the following year after Raise the Bar, that same team set the new budget, the new vision, and it was widen the gap. And I love
I
that.
love that. That's a good
Fantastic.
one. I love, and you talk about people, and it very much came up through our conversations that you are an incredible human leader. And when you think about your own leadership, product-led, people-led, customer-led, which do you, I mean, I think I'm going to guess, but I'd love for you to share, which one speaks to you?
100% people. When you hire great people and lead great people towards a common goal, you end up having great customer relationships, building great products, and ultimately the product, if it's a technology or information service, the customer relationships, the motivation of the team, the culture. To me, it all comes down to, if I didn't hire great people and motivate great people, I wouldn't have any of the other things. And so it really, to me, people first.
And okay, so and you just said they're hire great people. So how do you know who good people are? When you what do you look for? Like, what does your hiring look like?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, because I don't think you always get it right. And I'm very much a person that wants to trust in the leadership to develop great people as much as find somebody that's great, right? So if I'm hiring in the mid part of the firm or the senior levels of the firm, you can look to people's track records. But when you're hiring somebody, in their 20s, how do you know? So to me, it's a whole mixture of things. It's, do they feel hungry? Do they portray a good work ethic? Do they present themselves well with, great manners and respect? Do they show that they've got, both IQ and EQ in terms of the what you see in the meeting, or if you run independent testing, which is never a bad idea, and a interview process. And so I think that a lot of the things that I look for are not necessarily the math equation, the ability to model a deal, the ability to have the quickest answer. Those are things that I think across the people we're interviewing, they have good degrees, they've got through university, they've achieved a reasonable result. I then want to see all those soft things around them, and then I'm willing to take a bet on people and a bet on my team that they can develop really great individuals. A lot of firms, will find that the way they get great people, they feel is hire from, the best universities in the world. Well, the competition in the best universities is very, very high. And not every firm can recruit from those universities. For me, I kind of had the view that we should broaden our scope and our vision and identify the diamonds in the rough.
I love that. And
I'm just going to turn this thing off, Georgie.
And hold on, what I might do is 1 second, and I'm going to see if I might put this onto multi-speaker. Okay, there we go. I've just changed my the look here. And hold on, no, I'm going to go back. Bear with me. Don't worry, I'll cut this bit out. Yeah, you can see me okay like that.
Yeah.
And what really comes for me there is, yes, it's about competence, it's about capability, but there's a cultural fit piece there. And you talked about work ethic, you talked about the soft skills. In our conversations, I remember asking you, if you could write a book of your own, what would it be? And it was like, execution matters or manners matter. And I was really drawn to the piece about manners, because you've spoken about that at length in our conversation. And can you share a little bit around why that's important to you, and how does it show up in people?
Yeah, I actually think that, if you walked into a room, you can always divide the room by manners 50-50. There's always 50% of the people in the room that just have a really nice way with people. And that can come through the handshake, the smile, the attention they pay, their listening skills. There's a whole bunch of things that I think are good manners, right? Holding a door open, allowing people to sit down first, you know, wait till everybody's at the table before you start eating. There's all these little
Yeah.
things you learn through life. But it's amazing how you don't always see them in action. And because those people aren't as aware, they're not making themselves fully aware of their surroundings and how they can positively use their personality and manners to gain an advantage. And business is about gaining an advantage. It's about creating great products, but there are a lot of great products. We have choice. It's about hiring great people, but great people can work in many places.
Yeah.
It's about you know, innovation, and innovation can happen in a lot of different ways. But when you have people that have really positive energy and positive skills, it actually motivates such to me, a higher result. And it will impact a sale, it will impact a hire, it will impact the motivation of a team to work hard to the finish line, because those 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 skills are ones that are motivational. Think of the opposite: somebody yelling at you every day, somebody that shows up late to meetings, somebody that you know serves themselves before everybody else, uh, or doesn't serve the rest of the people at all. Um, doesn't acknowledge anybody else, for their, simple things, knows it's their birthday, doesn't acknowledge it. It's little things. And so that person, if I have to look at it, do I want to work for a rude person or a person that's well-mannered? I want to work for the well-mannered. Do I want to work for a lazy person or a hardworking person? I want to work for the hardworking person. Do I want to work for the boring person or the interesting person? I want to work for the interesting person. And so, therefore, those free skills in life, work ethic, manners, and developing your knowledge of what goes on around you are very important to great leaders. And I always recommend early in your career that you develop those skill sets and perfect them, because not everybody starts with them, but everybody can have those. Doesn't matter where you come from, what language you speak as a first language, what university you went to, where you're born, you have an opportunity to have those three things. And
Yeah.
sometimes some people have to work harder at them than others, and harder at different parts of them. There's three things there that you have to do. And so, if you're born with a family that's got great manners, I'm quite lucky, because if you're Canadian, everyone thinks you're nice to start. And generally, Canadians are nice. But guess what? So are Kiwis. And,
Yeah.
so are, people I meet in Japan. So are people, that I meet in Colombia. So there's many nationalities that kind of exude positive energy. And so I like that. But if you don't, um, you can still develop it. If there's many regions in the world that, develop, super work ethic, but the ones where it might be less can improve. And then being interesting is all about reading and paying attention. And that's available to us all. We're surrounded with podcasts and television series and news channels and books and audibles and you name it. So there's no reason not to know what's going on in the world.
Yeah, and I've written several things down here, but it's the little things, the big things that really struck me. And these are free skills; they're accessible to everyone. No one has to go to business school or outlay loads of money on learning these. These are accessible if you do them with intentionality. And the other piece I wrote down there is the what and how of leadership. The what is, the what we do of being a leader, but the how we come across, there's that emotional contagion impact. And it has the ability to have that ripple of impact out into the organization, into the teams, just by your being that motivational, that positivity, that eye contact, the handshake that you mentioned.
Definitely. No, if we focus on those behavioral aspects that all of us can do,
Yeah.
the result is infinitely better.
Yeah. And you said the word smile earlier, and I read a quote recently that said, "Winners are grinners, and grinners are winners," and I really like that because winners are grinners. People who smile. I think we're in the business of people, and ultimately, to your point, it's a very competitive marketplace. People want to do business with people they like and they trust, and I think if you're smiling with sincerity and you bring that warmth, that it can cultivate trust and that connection a little bit quicker.
Definitely. And if you look at some of the greatest leaders, not all, but many exude that positive energy. And my view is it's easy to have. So it to me it's kind of base foundation leadership. It doesn't need to be um, left out. It shouldn't be left out. It's kind of foundation activities.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there. And one thing that you share with me that, and I think I still like to write thank you cards. If I go out for dinner to somebody's, I still put pen to paper. And I remember in a panel we did, you said you always carry thank you cards in your bag, and that really struck me because the importance of a few words can motivate, transform. I mean, there's such power there, and I wondered if you could share a little bit about that because it really stuck with me.
Yeah, two things that I think sending a card is it's become rare. So therefore, when you get one, it differentiates. Whereas I think if we went back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, high performers probably sent cards all the time.
Yeah,
And I think early in my career in the 80s, when I was made a director, I think I was 29, I was made a director of a Canadian, investment firm. And all the other directors sent me handwritten notes. I still have them on their own letterhead with the
yeah,
company logo. That was something of becoming a director. You got your own letterhead. You got a slightly different embossed card with the logo embossed. And, there was just pride in achieving. And the notes that you got, were all handwritten. If I think today, you know, um, if you achieve something, it gets put up on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or somewhere, and you get a bunch of comments from people that might see it, but it doesn't feel quite as intimate as a letter. So I do like to send some cards. I don't think I send as many as I should. I do. I use a British app called Thoughtful. I don't know if you know it,
no,
Thortful. It's good all over the world. I think it's a British app, and it's kind of like Moonpig, the one to
yeah.
create cards. And I actually find that if I'm on a plane and I create one card on Thoughtful, I then create 10, and I like it because it has, a cheeky section, romantic section, for kids, for friends, for promotion, for baby. And I end up sending 10 cards. And I have to tell you that I get a lot of joy out of it doing it. But the most is when you have a friend in New Zealand, sends you a WhatsApp back of the card on their shelf and it's arrived there, and you go, okay, that was worth it all in its own.
Yeah.
And so uh, I've done more now. I'm using technology to do my cards, but I do have a couple. When I see great cards, they're landscapes or something. I like to pick them up. Recently, I was on Vancouver Island, and I grabbed a bunch of indigenous uh, um, postcards that were showing, different, carvings, totem poles, different indigenous art, and they're fantastic. And having those there, they remind me, oh, I got to write that. Who's going
Yeah.
to get that wonderful carving postcard?
And to your point, they leave such an imprint with people, and it's not a huge amount of time it takes, but the result of that, and I love what you said there. How do you differentiate yourself? And that's people want, that level of connection. I think it so bolsters the relationship.
Yeah. No, connection takes multiple forms. Again, if I really wanted to be great, to me, what great would be, and let's just take it for, if you really thought about it, maybe there's 50 really relevant people in your lives. I don't know, there might be more, but just say it was 50, because 50 is manageable. It's, 1.5 months of days. And you wanted a measurement of something to say that these people are relevant to me, and I want to respect that relevance. So it might be an old boss, might be a school teacher that you occasionally, are in touch with, or a university professor, might be a colleague that moved on to another company, could be your grandmother, your mother, your mom's sister, who's was great when you're young, but you never have any time to get that far down into the family tree anymore. If you put those 50 names on a piece of paper and all you said is text, email, card, telephone call, visit, 5 things, you want to do at least one of those things with the 50 by the end of the year. And you just did that on your desk and started ticking off. Now, to me, what I would do is I'd say, I want to have 3 interactions, because the easy thing to do is to create an update email and send it to all 50. And then at least you've connected. But to tell you the truth, that sounds, to some people, when you get that family update in a card, a holiday card, and somebody's taken the time to write a letter, but they just photocopied it and put in every card. And you just kind of going, oh God, another long family letter. But the fact is, a lot better than what I give people, right? So you can say it's, wow, they didn't write me a handwritten one. But the fact is they took the time to think about their year, to update you. And they think that you're a close enough friend, or know you're a close enough friend, that you're going to read it, and that the content matters. So my view is again, connectivity is measurable. Right now, we have a campaign in our fund where I'm working with one of my colleagues, and we have a top 50 potential investors. I call it the vitality of the pipeline. What's the vitality of the activities that we have in order to achieve success in an investment? And my view is it's updates, it's reporting, it's calls, it's visits, it's a whole bunch of things that have to happen by many people over a period of time. You don't measure it, you won't get there. 90% of teams in the world just tell each other what they're doing. How are you doing, Georgie? Did you see, ABC Corp when you were in London last week? Yeah, I saw them. Did you put it into the CRM? Oh, yeah, it's in there. Right? Which is different is we have a top 50 report, and it, as I'm looking down, I go, last interaction against the top 50. Wow, 30 of our top 50 have not had an interaction from any of us at this table for the last 30 days. How can they be top 50? Maybe they're not top 50. Maybe we should move them off the top 50 list. No, they're the most important. I go, well, if they're most important, it's not good enough. So again, we go back to where we started from, which is measurement and connectivity, and the vitality of the connectivity is what drives the great result. And I think vitality is another great leadership word, because it reflects, how much new revenue are you creating each year from your own team's innovation? So the innovation and new products, is it 3% of revenue, 5% of revenue, 10% of revenue forward in 3 years' times comes from products we created internally? I measure all of that. If you go back to IHS Markit public discussions, you'll hear vitality was a key word, and we measured it and we shared it with our board. So if you measure it, you have to be willing to share it.
And what really strikes me is that intentionality, being deliberate, and also having the analytical framework that you shared. It doesn't seem complex. It seems it's simple and done well, but it's about having a framework and everyone being aligned with that framework.
Yeah. Yeah, most things in life are simple.
Yeah.
We're not astronauts. We're not landing on the moon, right? We're not doing a complex brain surgery,
Yeah.
right? Those are complexities, right? We're not running the logistics technology for FedEx. Those are complex,
Yeah.
also measurable. But what you generally do in leadership is build great products, hire great people, service great customers, right? I add technology and efficiency. If I'm going to look at 5 things I want to measure, it's around customers, people, product, technology, front of the curve, and efficiency, which is costs. I don't like calling them costs.
Yeah.
I prefer efficiencies. And those 5 things are all very measurable. And most CEOs, when I ask them, they got lots of reports and then they go to KPIs, is where they go to, or OKRs. There's all sorts of things. I go, let's not make it so complex. What do we need to do and measure to ensure that we have just this overwhelming success? And that's what I want to know.
And that word overwhelming, I want to pull the thread on that because it's very easy in today's world for leaders where there are so many demands to live in the world of overwhelm because things are coming at you thick and fast. You're having to make decisions. So I suppose my question there is there an off switch for leaders? And if there is, what do you hit it with?
Well, I think if you're a great leader, you've learned how to manage your time. So you don't have to really turn off. It's just that you have to dedicate time to other things in your life as well to create balance so that you're not you're not ever in a position of regret that you're not doing, I didn't do enough with my family, I didn't do enough with my friends. I'm doing 80% of my life is my work, and all of my family, my friends, and my work all want more than 50% of my time. So I'm only achieving in the work bucket. That to me is failure in terms of organization. I think you have to develop as a leader the ability to stay balanced. You need to stay, fit and healthy. You need to spend time with friends, independent of your work colleagues. You need to spend time with your family, children, grandchildren, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters. You need to make time. And all of us go in deficit. I have a thing on my wrist called a Whoop, which measures all sorts. It's a mass amount of numbers. And one of the things it measures is sleep debt. And I woke up this morning and it said, well done. You've reduced your sleep debt to 35 minutes. Go to bed tonight at 11:21 and you can completely eliminate the sleep debt. And I went, wow, I think I'm going to do that. So, you can, there's a whole bunch of ways to be balanced, but I think it's important that you don't become that person that gets overwhelmed by work, right? Work is a place where there should be, you enjoy being, there's a lot of pleasure in it. You enjoy what you do. You enjoy creating the results. You're dedicated. You're in the detail, but you have to switch off at, a certain amount of your time. I find it really hard to believe in these 100-hour work week stories. I don't even know how people do it. You think 7 days a week, and you think 12 hours a day times 7, you go, that's only 84 hours. So, okay, let's go to 13. Oh, that's only 91 hours. Let's go to, 14 hours a day. It's only, 98 hours, whatever it is. And so, the fact is I think the 100-hour week, that's just a misnomer. That maybe some analysts in some roles and in final sprints for things occasionally have to do that. But let's go to the other end. How about 10 hours a day, Monday to Friday? That's 40 hours. Monday to Thursday, that's 40 hours, and 8 hours on Friday. That's almost a 50-hour week, and maybe a couple hours on the weekend to, think about next week. That's 50 hours. To me, that's getting to a nice balance. Because if you think about 50 hours in a week, and you think that if you sleep 8 hours a day, you've got 16 hours a day left, times 7, right? You've got, what's that, 112 or something. So, you've got to do 50 hours a week leaves you a lot of what I would call free time while you're awake to be with family, friends, thinking, reading, sports activities. So I always lived in the world of, if you're going to work with me, we're not postal workers. We don't have a 35 to 40-hour week, but you also are never going to be expected to work 100-hour weeks. This is a 50 to 60-hour week job, which is very manageable, where you can create balance in your life. And I generally believe that's possible for all types of roles in the world. Not every role. There's some roles that, don't allow that. You're an actor or an actress, and you're producing a movie, and you're on the final week of set, and you've got to get all the filming done. Maybe they're working 12, 15, 20 hours a day, but they're getting it done. And that's fun too, because when you're finished, you got a week or two off. So balance is very important.
And what really strikes me there is it's everyone's got their own set of enablers and it's fuel for the bigger picture. And that time with family, time for exercising, it's not time out, but it's time invested to enable you to show up at the level that you want to. And the final question I have, you mentioned family there, and I had the great privilege of speaking to your mum and dad. I know your dad has subsequently passed away, sadly, since we had that conversation. And there was just such joy and delight when they talked about your career arc. And I wondered, what do you think they're most proud of with the impact that you've had in the industry?
Well, actually, I think for, probably until I set up the climate fund with General Atlantic Beyond Net Zero, a lot of people look at, people that worked in financial markets or technology or information services. Really, nobody really understood the detail of the creation, because where I grew up, there wasn't a lot of industry. It was a lot more agricultural, farming, fisheries, forestry, more big, heavy industries. And so what I did was never really well understood by everybody around me. They did understand Carfax. So when IHS and Markit merged and Carfax was part of the equation, all of a sudden I had something where if somebody said, "What do you do?" and I said, "Well, do you know Carfax?" And of course, everybody knew Carfax. Today, it's a much better with climate, and being able to have a dialogue around the challenges that we face. We saw what happened this week in Valencia. Climate doesn't have any borders. It's impacting us all over the place in real severe ways. So I think that my mom now and my dad, before he passed, were very interested in climate change and how Beyond Net Zero was going to play a role in emissions reduction. So I think they were quite proud of that. Otherwise, I think most of their pride was around philanthropy and giving back. And they were always individuals that would take in the needy, would provide financial assistance to the level they could for anybody in need, help other family members, help communities. They were philanthropic in the way that they could be. And so when I sold merged IHS Markit with S&P Global, it created a real event in my life where I was able to do something, more substantive in terms of philanthropy. And that's probably what they were most proud of.
Thank you for that. And look, thank you for your time today. As always, I walk away with such insight and lessons myself. And so I'm excited for those that listen to take those valuable lessons away with them too. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's always a pleasure to get to talk together. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lance.
Good.
Okay, let me
Cover